Ladies and gents, we're back with Enginears. Thanks for joining us. And we've got today the guys and girls at SurePay, and we've got the CTO Friso with us, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the payments ecosystem and some fun things around authentication and verification in payments. So, Friso, nice to meet you. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Do you want to give us a little bit of an intro into SurePay, the last couple of years at SurePay, and I guess why the company and the idea were born? Help us understand that.
Yeah. So SurePay was born within the big bank, the Rabobank in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
About 5 years ago, there were some colleagues of mine. I was working at the Rabobank at the time. Some colleagues had this idea, which they pitched against the management, and it got funded, and it turned into what's now SurePay. And the idea is really simple. If you make a payment, then the account number is the only thing that matters, and the account name you fill in is not being validated. So the idea was to validate that against the account holder information of the target bank, of the beneficiary bank, basically. That was a very simple idea, but you can imagine it's really helpful for the end users to prevent misdirected payments and any type of fraud. So once it was introduced, we immediately saw the fraud being reduced by large percentages. So that's good. And on the other hand, for the banks, it's really beneficial because there's less manual operations needed to correct all those misdirected payments. So that's a really good use case. Yeah. And then, it started as a bit of a corporate startup, so to say, as a moonshot in innovation hub and so on. Yeah. Always with the intention to be able to sell the service also to other banks. So it was set up completely independent from the rest of the Rabobank organization, both from an organizational perspective and a technical perspective. Yeah. So it was built from scratch in the cloud.
Nice.
So that's very nice for all the engineers. I love that, of course, in greenfield scenario. And then soon enough, once it was live in the Rabobank, in the app, it was working, and it plugged into the account information. I think a year later or 2 years later, the other major banks of the Netherlands joined.
Nice.
And then soon enough, basically 99% of the market is now connected. So that's really great. Yeah, that's in the Netherlands. I can continue forever. I don't know how much you want to.
I wanted to ask in that, it looks like there's some fond memories. You say it with a smile on your face when you talk about everyone was quite happy. It was a greenfield project. What was that journey like from, in essence, being a moonshot, an incubator project, to going fully independent? What was that journey like? What pain comes with it?
Oh, a lot of pain. To be fair, I was not in the beginning part of the organization, although I was on the other side. I was making the banking application such that it could introduce this service. But some of the pains. First of all, it's very difficult to get banks to share their data with an independent organization, let alone an organization that's in the cloud. At this point in time, maybe banks are used to the cloud, but 6 years, 7 years ago, that was certainly not the case. So that was very scary. Then another hurdle to take is that it was part of one of the big banks in the Netherlands, but how to get to the point where other big banks would give the data, which was needed for the service, to that initial big bank, because in essence, the startup was part of the big bank. So those are very interesting hurdles to take. Of course, from a technology perspective, it's easy to start an application in the cloud.
Yeah.
but it's very difficult to make it such that it passes all the security audits that are needed for financial institutions. So that's a really difficult challenge. So we have many security controls and policies and so in place, as you can imagine.
I can imagine that one proof case of being able to show what you can do, and I can just imagine the concept now. Rabobank started to use the service initially, and that proof case of look at what we can do and look at what we can do for you if we integrate with you, to being able to look at 99% of the market. That's a pretty impressive journey in a couple of years, right?
Yeah, so the lean startup methodology was used there. So first with kind of empty proof of concepts or empty storyboards or so, literally going to train stations and asking people if they would be interested in such a service.
Wow.
Until the point where we actually had a proof of concept, and also if you have it live in a banking app, you can set it live for maybe 1% of or friends or family, and then you can measure all kinds of things. The speed is very important because you don't want it to interfere in the customer journey too much.
Yeah.
So those type of things were being discovered, and then it was tuned until the algorithm was so good that we thought, well, now we can really go live.
Wow. Okay.
And then indeed it's very nice because you have something to show. You can go to your friends with the mobile app, etc.
Yeah.
And then other banks, they see the competitor with a really nice feature, so they want to have that feature also.
Yeah.
And a very good motivator, of course, is the consumer market. So the social media, so eventually got full of people who wanted this feature, right? So then every bank has to, it's like an oil stain.
I can imagine going from 0 to 1 is harder than going from 5 to 10. That you're talking about that snowball effect. I can imagine that, and it just continues.
Maybe, It's of course we have set the product as a SaaS product. So the idea is that if you have more customers, then it becomes easier. But in the beginning, you have to understand that it was very much tuned to the Rabobank, and then when the second bank came, it turned out that they had different standards, and of course we couldn't tell them, well, you have to follow our standards. So that was too early for that. So we ended up with the first iterations with many different standards and different ways of integrating with banks, until you come to the point where you're big enough to make it more standardized, and then it becomes easier to onboard new banks. But
nice.
That was a long journey. Yeah.
No, I bet. Yeah. I bet. Can we roll it back just to the start and understanding the product just simply, because I think we dived into 99% and everything. That's my fault. How can our listeners really understand SurePay and what you offer banks and customers, essentially?
The essence is that we want to make payments simpler and with less fraud possibilities. So that was the beginning. So when you make a payment, before you actually make the payment, we already validate whether the account you think you're going to make a payment to is actually the account that you intended to pay to. That's the initial use case.
Yeah.
When we moved to the UK, so we also entered the UK market. We'll come back to that later, I guess.
Nice.
There it's a little bit differently implemented. So that's when you set up a new beneficiary, you already verify the account holding name. Then there is an important second use case, because we have seen that corporates or any organization, not necessarily a bank, also want the same functionality in the KYC or onboarding process. You can imagine that when you sign up for any energy company or whatever, you have to fill in a bank account, and
Yep.
then the organization wants to have proof that it's your bank account.
Yep.
Yeah. So in the old days, there were all kinds of tricks to prove that.
Okay.
But with this service, it's fairly easy to prove it. You just make an API call, and if the name matches what the customer says, then
Amazing.
Then you're sure that it's the right one. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and it seems fairly easy if I tell it like this. Well, you just verify the name, but the names can be so complicated. I was surprised when I entered this space, because a name can be it can be a long name with many middle names, or you have maybe previous names or maiden names. You have prefixes, surnames, and then the CRM data of banks can be very polluted. It can be the result of a merger, or it can be spread in different databases, maybe with truncations here and there. And then you have businesses. Many businesses have lots of trading names. So you want also to have the trading names taken into account. So we plug into other sources like the Chamber of Commerce sources and so on. So it becomes very difficult in the end.
Yeah,
but that's what makes it nice.
There's some literal complexity there. I can imagine that sometimes that can fall down to human error as well. You touch on something that I want to pick up on, as in it might sound easy, but we're always interested in what's difficult. So help us understand, and we can uncover this over the next 20, 30 minutes or so. Help us as an audience understand what gets difficult about building SurePay. We can uncover some things around scalability. We can touch on some things around security in the cloud. But what do you think fundamentally is challenging about building SurePay, engineering-wise?
So there are lots of challenges. So the functionality is already challenging, as I was trying to explain. But on the non-functional side, security and performance is challenging also, especially performance in the beginning. You want to have a good customer journey experience, a good user experience, especially in the mobile application. If a round trip to a server takes more than, let's say, 100 milliseconds, you will already feel it in a bad user experience. It feels like it's not smooth and so on. So if it takes a second, then the users are really annoyed. So we had to make sure that it's very as fast as possible. That also means that you want to avoid remote calls. You want to have databases that are really tuned to the maximum, and lots of performance testing. That's one aspect. The other thing is that when you make payments, at least in the way we use it, it's we get a transaction for every payment, and those are millions per day. So that has to be scalable, and with peaks going up and down. So with normal payments also, if you have a Christmas Day or so, it goes up, and etc. So the scalability is important. Then from a security perspective, we had to harden the images we were using a lot. You might say, let's use Docker, for example, or containers, and then you can easily scale. But 6 years ago, it was not mature enough from a security perspective. So we were using more infrastructure as code or infrastructure service rather than PaaS. Those are a few of the things that we bumped into.
How do you think? I'm going back to that concept, and trust me, I know it's a lot more complex than this, but if we go back to the concept of 0 to 1 customers is probably tougher than 5 to 10. What is that journey like? If we're talking about 0 to 1 million transactions in a day and taking that from 5 to 10, How do you think about, or how does the team think about scalability, but staying performant? How are
Yeah.
you able to do that, or what do you need to think about to ensure that?
Yeah. Well, luckily, cloud technology helps a lot. It's with auto scaling and load balancing, so you can do already a lot. If
Okay.
you, yeah, if you're designing in a stateless way, where you can have servers being scaled up easily, that
Okay.
already helps, of course. I think one of the challenges for us mostly is the scaling up in both functionality, and so in product offering and in team size. So
Okay.
when we started, and that was only 2 or 3 years ago, we had only one team, and then automatically you get a bit of a monolith, right? Because if you have one team, why would you have multiple servers,
Okay.
microservices or so? That's not necessary. Also from a performance perspective, that was not necessary. So it's a little bit like a monolith. But then when you scale up with more multiple teams, you have to re-architecture.
Okay.
But re-architecturing, because otherwise the teams cannot work independently, right? If you have one code base or one monolith and you have multiple teams working in the same, then you're completely you cannot move, basically. So you have to re-architecture, but at the same time, you are already in production. So you have to maintain something that is in production, with or without incidents. So that crosses everything. So that those type of scalability issues were kind of difficult. And then also another challenge I've seen is that we work Scrum based. I think the whole world works Scrum based nowadays, but so that means we have sprints of maybe 2 weeks. But if you onboard new customers, they want to have direct communication. If they provide us with, let's say, a batch file, or we also have real-time integration, they want to, as soon as they are ready, they want to go live. And so that interferes with this Scrum way of working. So that's also an interesting aspect.
Okay. So it's not necessarily the engineering scalability, it's the physical scalability of teams,
I think
code
so.
base, and how everyone, I guess, collaborates.
I mean, the engineer scalability also, but I think maybe the other is even more challenging. But obviously in the beginning we had to how do you say redesign everything and make it stable and remove child diseases, and figure it out again and again and again until you come to a point where it's really stable. And I must say the past couple of years it's been fairly stable. So we have very little incidents, and that's for a large degree because of the cloud technology where you can easily scale up.
Payments in the cloud. Well, we haven't spoken so much about this offline, but payments in the cloud and security, what would you advise from your learnings for people to be cautious of? Because I've heard some of my own experiences of companies don't use the cloud when it comes to payments. And I think you're right. 5 or 6 years ago, I think it was approved that you could process bank details or debit cards through the cloud. So companies choose reliability and do things themselves. What have you learned? What can you share?
In the beginning, I remember also in the Rabobank, but for any bank. So the financial, the governmental institution, they had to approve. And so almost to the point where every microservice you put in the cloud had to be approved by some institution who doesn't even know what you were building. So that was in the old days. Luckily, it's now a little bit more common to build something in the cloud. But there are a lot of security and regulations issues here. We, for instance, use the ISO 27001. That's fairly common nowadays. But for me, it was also new. If you work in a big corporate, then there's always someone who is an expert on this. But if you work in a small company like ours, a startup, you have to figure this out yourself. So also, all the engineers need to be aware of it with the acceptable use policy and disaster recovery, business continuity. So all these policies are important. And then when you work with big banks, financial institutions, they would want to know that you are compliant to those policies. So they would either want the certifications, but on top of that, they will always do their own audits. So we have seen a lot of audits from all the banks, and that is really time consuming.
Is it?
They want evidence of everything you do, which makes sense, right? I mean, the banks are being watched at by you don't want to be in the newspaper that there's some data breach because you
integrated another company, a little
exactly
startup.
Yeah, and that also means that's something that was a little bit new for me, but that also means that our suppliers, we have to audit in the same way as we are being audited by, or at least have a thorough vendor assessment. So the suppliers of the suppliers of the suppliers, because there can be a data breach in any of it. And if you have a data breach, at least in our case, that would be disastrous.
Awful. I still think that the business case for SurePay is still unbelievably good, and I'm surprised it's not been done before. Might have been, but I still think it's unbelievably good because left, right, and centre there are data breaches, fraud breaches constantly. I think it's such a good verification mechanism that safeguards everyone. Really, if you're paying attention, everyone.
Yeah, no, true. It's the users are very happy with this service in general. It helps people a lot. If you make a transfer of a big amount to an account you never used before, you're always like double checking, right? And so it helps a lot.
Yeah. Can we touch back on some of the engineering parts? We touched on the scalability and the performance part, which is a pretty common theme, I think, in payments, especially at some of the scale that you're operating at, millions of transactions a day. What else from an engineering standpoint do you think gets tough, tricky, and fun at SurePay that engineers enjoy?
Yeah, that engineers enjoy. Well, availability, of course, goes a bit together with the scalability and so on. But when we entered the UK market, it was even more important because there the 24/7 support is a must-have. And also to the point where we needed to have 2 regions even. So one AWS region was not even enough. We had to have 2 regions. So that's and each region has 3 availability zones. So you can imagine how redundant everything is and super available. From an engineering perspective, it's of course interesting to be able to deploy something in production while not going while continuing, while not going down without any outage. And I think it's always a challenge to deploy anything in production. The more you do it, the better. But there's also this force where you are always a little bit afraid of messing something up. So that's this.
Good point. How do you build that resiliency mindset in engineers? You can hire for it, but not everyone has it unless you are in that environment. So how do you build that mindset in a team? Because I've seen resiliency environments before or multi-region architectures, but never got anything on pod around that. So how do you build that in your teams?
Yeah, it's of course, having people with the right skills. We focus a lot on DevOps engineers who have cloud technology knowledge.
Yeah.
But in my view, it's good. It's a bit of the agile way of working in that sense. I think if you want to be good at deployments without outage, you have to do it often, and that means that in the beginning you'll make mistakes,
Yeah.
which of course the business doesn't like. And I'm being hit on my head for it, but people make mistakes. But if you do it often and you have small increments, those mistakes become eventually very few. And if the increments are small, then of course also the impact can be relatively small. So that's that's of course important. Other things. We have best practices like you can not put something in. You don't have production access by default, least privilege paradigm and so. But if you go to production, there's always 4i principle. There's a high degree of automation, so that's something that everybody is aware of. That also means that when I hire people, I try to focus on that. So I don't want people who are satisfied with semi good thing. We focus on quality basically. So from a QA perspective, that means a lot of automation, but also in the DevOps world, it means infra as code, so that you can reproduce everything. So those are common practices, but I understand them, so I try to also encourage it and have the time for it.
Make sense.
Time for it also.
That's a good one. Make time for it. And
many times. Many times I hear from engineers. Many times say that the business wants this and this, and there's no time for fixing something or no time for upgrading something. But I have a technical background myself, so I understand the need for keeping up to date the technology. So if you use a very old Java version, nobody will be happy, and eventually it will bite you in the tail. And the same with your Elastic database. If it's an old version, you have vulnerability issues, and you have to make room to improve it. The same for automation and so on. So technical depth is not an issue as soon as you are able to pick it up. So don't leave it like it is. It's constant, continuous improvement, basically.
Nice. Okay. What else do you think resembles your engineering culture at SurePay? A resiliency mindset or reliability, but what else do you think resembles? If I was going to walk into a room, what would I see in the room at SurePay?
Well, now we work all remote because of the pandemic. But
if I walk into 10 rooms,
right? Well, one of the things that you will notice immediately is the diversity in terms of culture. So we have, I think, 25 nationalities or so. So that's really a lot of, from all over the world.
Okay.
Each of the employees bring in their own a little flavor. We had once we had a Christmas event where everybody brought in, for example.
Don't say food.
Food.
I love food. I love food.
Yeah. So that's really nice. But apart from that, we have autonomous teams. We now have about 4 teams. Each has a product owner. We have DevOps engineers that focus on cloud technology. We have developers who work with the Java stack. A lot of Kotlin is being used. And we have QAs that focus on end-to-end testing or test support or these kind of things.
We've got quite a lot of people who follow us who are Netherlands-based or interested in the Dutch startup ecosystem. So can you just give us a little bit of insight into maybe if you're hiring, you're obviously hiring in those areas that you mentioned in DevOps, backend, and QA.
Yeah.
Just give us a little bit of context as to, I guess, what you're optimizing for in when you're looking for people, or what the current state of affairs are at the moment.
Yeah, we are based in Utrecht. We have our own office in Utrecht, which is the center of the Netherlands. But it's a very small country, so it's reachable from all over the place. What I like is a bit of diversity. So that means for an engineer, for example, also that it's really good if you have seen more than just Java. If you know, for example, Kotlin, or you've played around with Python or with some other language, or you have cloud technology experience. And the same for DevOps engineers and QA. If you have done a little bit more than just the regular, that's good, because ultimately we also want to move more into a space where you have T-shaped personalities. Right? So it's not necessarily that we get rid of the specialism, but we don't want people to be really strict in a very narrow domain. So if a developer needs to do some cloud formation, then there should be no impediment in that sense. So that's the direction where we're going. So the people we are hiring are already more used to that type of working. Apart from that, I think it's very important to be a good team player. The usual communicative. We all speak English. That's very nice if you can speak English.
That's helpful.
No, that's helpful. Yeah.
So if people are listening, I think summarizing that, don't be scared to get in touch from any paradigm, languages, backgrounds. Just get in touch. And as long as you can write some Java code, do you want to see people being able to write Java code?
Yeah. So what part of our interview process includes a little assignment.
Fine.
In the old days, I was a bit skeptical about assignments. I think it will make people nervous and so, but I've seen that it really works. So we don't do it on the fly, so we don't look at how you type in things. You can do it in your own time. But then when you have submitted the assignment, we will talk about it, and I've seen a very good way of getting to know people and what level they are. Are they very junior or very senior or in between? And we have an assignment for different roles. So for DevOps engineer, we have a different assignment. For QA, different development. Yeah, it works pretty well. Yeah. I'm really happy with the recent hires we did. Really,
I think the articulation and uncovering what someone's built and understanding their mindset, I've seen that work quite well as well.
Yeah.
That's a good one. We've obviously listened to a successful story, a successful incubator story, and you've ramped up massively, looking after 99% of the industry. Netherlands, UK, in the Netherlands, sorry. UK not. So
in the UK it's not 99%, but it's still a high percentage. I don't know, like 30%.
High percentage. Okay. So before and as a lasting message, help us understand what's next, or if you're able to tell us what you think is next for SurePay. So that leaves people wondering, I should get involved.
Yeah. So from a technological point of view, what's next is scaling up what I said with re-architecting and moving more into containers and lambdas and microservices type of architecture.
Nice.
From a business point of view, it's the UK market, it's huge. It's much bigger than the Netherlands, so we're not finished there at all. We want to continue. The confirmation of PI, as it's called in the UK, is going to phase 2. So that means that a lot more banks will join. So we are in that space. And at the same time, we are trying to expand to other countries. Yeah, so that's really nice. And then the whole of Europe is really interested in this type of services, even beyond Europe. And of course, a second axis is the expanding of the portfolio itself. Recently, we introduced a new product, which is related, but it's a separate product called Pay ID, where we make it possible to pay to a mobile number, your contact in your mobile phone, rather than an account number. So that's an interesting service.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
It's in several countries there is something similar, but in most of the initiatives we have seen, it's a closed ecosystem. So it's one bank, for example. So we want to make it cross bank.
I won't name the company, but I've seen that in South America.
Right.
I've spoken to someone really recently who told me a little bit about the use case for it, where people in this country didn't have a bank account, but they had a cell phone. Right. And how do we get money to these people? And I just found that was a really interesting concept. So nice. Okay.
It is. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and we have some other products in the pipeline. We did something with the switchover service in the Netherlands, and some other initiatives with cross border payments, for example.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of potential, to be honest. It's very interesting.
Cross-border payments is through the roof as well. Peer-to-peer transfer, and you've seen all the companies. Again, I won't name all of them, but you've seen that recently, really recently in the press. There's so much potential for that. So good. That's nice to see.
Yeah, I think so also, yeah.
Good. As we're wrapping up, I think it's probably important to mention that, like I said, an interesting incubation project you've obviously developed, adding products to your portfolio. People who are listening, please go check out SurePay's careers page. If you don't have if you do have a JVM background, great. If you don't, it's no issues. You've heard it from them themselves. So get in touch if you want to work with some pretty interesting scale and have that T-shaped mindset. Come and get in touch with these guys and girls.
Great. Yeah, that would be really nice.
Friso, can I just say a big thanks?
Oh, thank you.
Thanks. Yes.
Right, you're welcome.
And for everyone who's listening, check out some of their pages below and check out this page. Give us a like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, family, everyone. And a big thanks from us at Enginears as well. Friso, thanks a lot.
Right, thanks.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Enginears is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found at Enginears.io. It's no_. We've also got a website, which is enginears.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.